does not become reality through magic. It takes a lot of hard work. I'm your hostess, Shamiza Ali, and welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. It is a pleasure being here with you this evening. Good evening to everyone joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Tonight, our topic will be Schools Expansion Program and Curriculum Development. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well-known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh.
Shamiza, and welcome to our viewers, panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Our panelists are Dr. Gangaram Das.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, and Professor Narayan Prasad.
Good evening.
Our guest tonight is the Minister of Education, the Honorable Priya Manickchand. Good evening and welcome, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Tara, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shamiza, and welcome to the Honorable Minister of Education. You know, we've been trying very hard over the past couple of weeks to get her on the program, but she was excessively busy. We are very happy to have her. And I want to welcome the other panelists, Professor Narayan Prasad and Dr. Gangaram Das. Minister, I want to make a short statement before we start, but we note that your ministry was in the news recently, and up to today I read something from the Attorney General defending the Chief Education Officer, his testimony before the Commission of Inquiry into the Madhya tragedy. And I'm sure you want to offer some comments on that. So please proceed.
Yes, education, good night. Thank you for the invite. I'm really sorry that I kept saying I couldn't make it, but you know, just coincidentally on Thursdays, we've had a whole host of different things. I sensed your impatience this morning when you asked again, but I'm glad I'm able to come on. The education is almost always in the news every day. I pointed out yesterday that from the Madhya tragedy, which was really tragic, to now we've had 17 editorials in one newspaper on the matter alone. And frankly, we like the scrutiny. I think unlike what people could believe, I like scrutiny. I like commentary. I like feedback. And social media provides a really good platform for that. So a lot of people have been able to reach us on the social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and so on. Not only on the ministry's pages, but I see people have used other activists also to reach us. It's both good and bad. It's good because it's easy for people to reach us, but it's bad because you then have to filter out what's true and what's not. Because those forums allow people the freedom to write anything they want. So I'd say about 40% of what you see has some merit and is worthy of follow-up action. And about 60% is just a parent who's upset with the system that is trying to serve his or her child. Now, here's the thing about that. I think our commitment is that we will check each and every complaint, whether we believe it or not, or it doesn't matter if the last 10 we checked were inaccurate, we'll still check the 11th one because it could be warranting and meritorious. On the Madhya issue, today I had cause to write a very long letter to the Starboard News on the issue also because that particular newspaper was just writing whatever they felt like writing without having regard to the truth that they themselves had published in other parts of the newspaper. So, and what is that truth? The truth is that we're forced to have dorms in the country because some villages are just too small to have secondary education as a discrete school in the village. So, you know, the international learning is that you don't really start a secondary school unless you have about 250 students. We've done for less, but you can't start a secondary school with 10 students. And one of the very simple, if people are wondering why, secondary is different from primary. So secondary, you have like 30 to 35 subjects, which would be about 35 teachers. If you were to start a school with 10 or 20 children, you'll have more teachers than children. You'll have entire classes with one or two children in it. And it's not healthy for the kids, and it's not a good learning environment for them. And so the international learning on the matter is that you really don't start a secondary school unless you have, 200, 250 children. So because of how our demographics are and how our geography is in Guyana, there are villages that have 5 children, and then the next door village has 20, and the next closest village has 30. So what happens is we have a secondary school that's relatively central to those villages, and then dormitory facilities for children to live in and be looked after while they're going to school. And when the PPP took office in 1992, we had one single hinterland secondary school, one, in regions 1, 7, 8, and 9. We now have about 14, and we're expanding right now. I see the program is about expansion, so we'll talk about some of that later on. But similarly, we wouldn't have had dorms. We've had dorms built up over the years. And then, wherever you have a large number of persons, you always have some problems, and a dorm will probably not be as good as a home, as in someone's private domestic property. So you have some problems with dormitories, and we everywhere in the world. And so that is the truth, that we have to have dorms to have an education for these children, a solid education. The other truth is that we had a tragedy in May of this year at a place called Madia in Region 8 in Guyana, where it is alleged that another dorm resident set fire to the building. And what we had resulting was the death of 20 young girls, school children. And it's a very emotive issue. It rips at anybody's heartstrings. We also have to keep a level head on when we're dealing with the issue. And that's what we were asking. We were asking for truth to prevail, for the realities of our country to be taken into consideration when we're having commentary on this matter. The other truth is that I had commissioned a report into dorms in the country, with a view to making sure the children who were staying at those dorms would be the most comfortable that as is possible in those kinds of conditions. And it's that report that has attracted some attention, naturally, about whether we did anything with the report. What we took of objection to was the repetition of this made up narrative that we had done nothing with the report, when in fact the opposite is true. As soon as I got the report, I shared it with my colleague ministers, because the Ministry of Education does not look after dorms. It's the Ministry of Local Government. So I shared it with the Minister of Local Government, the Minister of Finance, and the Cabinet. And because of that, decisions were taken before the fire that we would repair the dorms across the country over a period of a few years. And we had begun to do that. There was even a budgetary allocation made in the 2023 budget to look at some of 5 of the dorms. Ironically, Madia was not a priority mention in the report, because they weren't as badly off as some of the other dorms. So that's where we are with with that. And I'm happy to say that over right now we have either finished or are finishing off the repairs of those dormitory facilities in Santa Rosa in Region 1, Anna Regina, Aurora, Charity, and Wakapaw in Region 2, Maikoni in Region 3, Skeldon in Region 6, Aishalton in Region 9, Linden Foundation in Region 10. That we're all in the process of repairing and renovating those dorms in accordance with minimum standards that were recommended in the report that I told you I commissioned. So that's where we are with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister.
This report was was this report prepared by the Ministry of Education and funded by the UNICEF,
It
or
was.
is
So
it
the
a
Ministry of
UNICEF
Education,
report?
yes, the Ministry of Education asked for the report, and UNICEF paid for it, but it belongs to the ministry. It was commissioned by the ministry. It belongs to the
Okay.
ministry. UNICEF paid for it. It has been popularly called the UNICEF report, but it's a misnomer. It's not the UNICEF report.
Okay. Go ahead, Shamisa.
Oh no, Dr. Tara was I wasn't sure if you were ready. So I just wanted to
Yeah, no,
confirm that.
okay. Just clarify this to me. The Ministry of Education responsible for the construction of those dorms, but who's responsible for the management, the day-to-day management of
No,
those
not
dorms?
necessarily. The ministry is not responsible for the construction. It depends on how. So most times the responsible agency is the regional administration where the dorm falls. If it's in Madia, it would be Region 8. If it's in Santa Rosa, it would be the RDC of Region 1, the Education Department, and the Regional Democratic Council. Sometimes the government, the Ministry of Finance, the budgetary process can place the finances into central ministry to construct and build. But after the building, it's still the regional administration that is responsible for maintenance and upkeep and cleanliness and feeding the children and making sure they hire staff that is adequate and so on.
Okay, thank you. I know the education sector has to play a critical role in the social economic transformation of Guyana. In your education sector plan 2021 to 2025, you listed 5 priority areas. One, to improve the efficiency of the education system. 2, to improve the governance and accountability. 3, to improve performance at all levels. 4, to reducing inequities in education. 5, contributing to ongoing education and employability. Now, that was summarized. I don't know if you developed further priorities, but this seemed to be compatible with the idea of social economic transformation. But before that, I just want to point out something very quick to you. The PNC was arguing that, for example, in 2018, they had allocated 17% of the total budget to education. And they point out in 2023, the PV only allocated about 12%. But what they are missing the point is that the PVP has increased the expenditure by almost 4.5 times than what they spent in 2020 in 2018. So they have, as a matter of fact, I believe that they spent. I have a figure here. Let me just read it. I think this might be interesting. There, in 2018, their per capita expenditure in education was the equivalent of 122 US. In 2023, that was 562 US, which is almost 4.6 times there. They was trying to minimize the impact and the trust where the education got by point. Now they get a lower proportion in the national budget. They're just, anyhow, that's by way of passing. Now, if you can address us on, if you want to make any comments in those.
Well, two things. I'm
that's
glad you
fine, but
pointed out what was appropriated to the Ministry of Education in 2018. But another interesting figure is to look to see what was actually spent. They were unable to spend what was allocated to them, which really means people didn't get service. So they weren't able to, the laziness, the incompetence, the failure to plan resulted in them being able to finish that budget in that financial fiscal year. And so a lot of that was actually sent back, the result of which was that children went without textbooks, schools went without being repaired, and just the whole, it was a mess, really. For example, we've learned that we knew that one of the big issues for education was this commission of inquiry. President Granger was very fond of commissions of inquiry, and so everything had a commission, and the education sector had a commission of inquiry in 2017. Up to the day they left office, they never published that report. I had asked for that report in excess of 3 times in the National Assembly from the floor, so that we could see what was in the report, what was needed, and so on. And it's interesting. The report never mentioned dormitories. The report never mentioned it. They have had good reason not to publish it. It was very nothing really was said that could not have been said, or that was not already known by the Ministry of Education. So it's not only what was allocated, but whether it was spent, and then when it was spent, how it was spent. And so what you had was children receiving less, teachers receiving less, parents receiving less. So now we spend, as they said, 12% versus 17% of the budget. But each child gets a cash grant. Each classroom gets a cash grant. All the textbooks are being given to children. We've expanded the school feeding program where all our grade 6 children get breakfast, and all grades nursery to grade 2 get a juice and biscuit meal. All the hinterland children get a hot meal. We have provided more transportation by way of boats and buses than they had. We have built 6 new secondary schools in the last 3 years, where not a single one was built during the 5 years that the APNU was in. So with ours smaller, we've done more because we're more organized, we're more focused. We have, you spoke of the 5 priority areas that we put out in the 2021 to 2025 sector plan, which we published. In 93, the World Bank did a study on Guyana, and they said one of the things we must not go without is a sector plan for the Ministry of Education, for the education sector. So if you look at the 93 report, you'll see that. And the only time from 1993 to now that we went without a published education sector plan was between 2015 and 2020, when the PNC came back in. That's the only time the country went since 1993 without a published sector plan. But this plan wasn't written in isolation, and it wasn't written only with regard to what had happened before. What is in this plan is what we had gone out to the people when we were campaigning and saying, we'd like your vote, and if you give us your vote, we'll support you once we're in government, and we'll make sure your lives get better and your children's lives get better. Those promises, promises that arose out of what people said they wanted, is what's also captured in the sector plan. So things like curriculum reform, better monitoring of schools, better support through textbooks and food, and the cash grants and so on. All of that was stuff we had promised. Lifelong learning and an interest in TVET, and the expansion of the TVET sector. These are all things that we promised to the people when we were campaigning to win their votes and earn their votes. And because we had promised those, they're in the sector plan. And it's really the sector plan that we're trying to run down, make sure we finish.
Okay, thank you. Before I pass you on to the panelists, let me just start to ask you about the expansion of the school. You mentioned about 6 schools. Are those high school, primary school, or what?
So we built quite a bit of primary schools, but I was speaking specifically of high schools. So all high schools in between 2015 and 2020, not a single secondary or high school, as you call it, was started and finished under the APNU. That is despite the fact that when we exited office in 2015, we left World Bank funding for 4 massive secondary schools, 1,000 children secondary schools. We left the funding, we left the design, we left all of that, and not a single one was finished in those 5 years. In just under 3 years of the PPP's governance, we have opened 6 new secondary schools. So you can compare the pace there at which we're working. And of course, it's not easy. It's not, I heard someone say the other day, cutting ribbons is not important. And I just didn't, I looked in sadness at that person because for me, it's the work that went into getting us to the place of being able to cut a ribbon. And the children who will benefit from that ribbon being cut. Look, across the country right now, we have children going to school half day or 2 days a week on rotation. So one class comes 2 days a week, a next class comes 3 days a week. That's not a proper education. We have children sitting in auditoriums and on the stairways because there's no place for them to sit. We have children coming on what you call double sessions, some in the morning, some in the afternoon, because they don't have space to sit. We have children sitting in the community center at Potentia, Wales, because we don't have space in the schools for them. And so it's not something to make light of. It's an investment in people's children. It's an investment in the future of this country. And I'm very, very, very pleased to be associated with cutting the ribbons for those schools.
Yeah, you don't have any figure of how many primary school you built during this period. You know
Um,
how much will be
I,
available to
I,
you?
there are quite a few. We are about to build 6 massive primary schools with the IDB right now. One at this place called Rec Dorsey, which many of you might know as Parfait Harmony. One at Tapatinga in Letham.
Okay.
One at Tushin on the west coast. Oh no, I think Tushin might actually be East Bank Essequibo. I'm not sure. I think so. Um, so that's three. Some large primary schools where we still need primary schools. Now the UN has declared Guyana to be have accomplished universal primary education. That means that wherever in the country children are of primary age, they're able to access a secondary school. But we're not happy with just sitting by with what we have. We want to make sure we do better. So, last year on this day, Facebook reminds me that I went to a place called Kokshibai in Region 9, where I think for a couple of miles I was vertical. We had to drive up this mountain, and it was really poor conditions. But I say that to say at the highest mountaintop or in the lowest valley, we'll make sure children are being educated. And that was to cut the ribbon for a primary school that was now being placed there after people had been living there for about 200 years. So prior to that, they would have to walk down the mountain for about 2 hours to get to school and then 2 hours to get back home. So all across the country, you will see schools going up. We're pretty good with primary. We need some more nursery schools and we need some more secondary schools. As we speak right now,
Okay,
6
thank you. I
secondary
pass you
schools
now to
are being constructed.
I pass
So,
you now to Dr. Ganga.
Hello, Honorable Minister. Hello, our viewers out there. Nice to be here. I just want to make an overall comment regarding the report you described. One of the things that I experienced in say, leaving the United States and going to another campus, let's say Nova Scotia in particular, a place that I've never been to, the first point of contact is campus security. And so this should be an ongoing base and activity, the hub for that location. And with that, it would avoid and obviate lots of other problems or any problems that is looming. And especially in these trying times, campus security should be a priority everywhere. And that would lead to other steps and logical development of student centeredness on the campus. So, those are my overall added comments on what you've said.
mhm.
I don't have
You
a
have any
question.
question?
Well, the logical thing is we would have to allocate funds specifically earmarked for campus security. from the high schools all the way to UG campus.
Right. So most schools have security. I'm not sure if we're most schools have some kind of guard service that is working. Many of them have a 24-hour service. But yeah, most schools have a service.
And of course, it has to be professionally managed. You have to verify that the place is safe and so on.
All right. Professor Narayan, he's, I don't know if you know him, he's
First,
formerly from Bushlat, right? Or Black,
Bath,
you're from Bushlat, right?
Bath. No, Bath
Oh,
settlement.
okay.
You can hear me?
Bath
Bath
settlement,
Estate.
sorry.
Yes.
Bath Estate.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Your
Yes. Before I ask, I have a few questions. But before I ask the question, Minister, you mentioned there are certain prerequisites for a high school. If my village people, in the time I was growing up, if they were waiting for these prerequisites to have a high school, many of them would remain dumb. Where I was a teacher, and secondary level, who could run into secondary education, we were encouraged as teachers to offer lessons to these kids so that they acquire an education, a secondary education, without having a physical structure, because we were allowed to utilize the elementary school for those programs. Now, said that, I noticed that you have embraced what I would consider a dead slogan from the Bush campaign here in the United States. Can you please explain the reason I say it's a dead?
Which slogan is that, Professor? I am not hearing you. I think you're breaking up. I'm not sure if it's me alone that has that problem, or if it's on your end. But what is the slogan you think I've embraced?
No, no. Did you hear that?
No.
Can you hear me?
okay.
No,
Check
you're
your mic.
breaking up.
Yeah, open your volume.
Okay, let me see what I can do here.
I'm hearing you now. So I mean,
Okay, sorry about that. You can hear me. I was talking about No Child Left Behind. And the reason I say that, Minister, is that when Bush advocated for No Child Left Behind, there were no policies because the states had their own. And I was wondering about your adaptation of this slogan to the Guyanese context. If you can elaborate on that, I think it'll be helpful.
I very rarely, I don't know if I've ever really actually used that phrase or slogan, No Child Left Behind. What had happened is under the Sheikh Baksh ministry, when he was Minister of Education, a new policy was introduced, and that was that we would adopt the American type, everybody's a winner. So you're all going to move on to the next grade. So you go to first form and you get under 50%, you'll still move into second form and third form and fourth form. And I think in explaining that to the population, somebody said it was like the US, where no child would be left behind. And so that caught on and people were speaking of that. But I personally have not used that phrase. What that is, though, is, and I don't use it for particular reasons because I think it's two different programs. What the US No Child Left Behind was very different from what we were doing here. And so what we're doing here is very simply saying what was happening is if a child failed, get 50% or less, or 40% or whatever the benchmark was, they would keep the child back in the current grade. So you're in first form or grade 7, you fail to get 50%, you wouldn't move into grade 8 or form 2. There was two problems with that. One, keeping the child back didn't necessarily solve whatever issue they had. In many cases, you could get kept back because you got 20% in art and 5% in music and 3% in um, uh, home ec, stuff that you might never do again in your life if you don't want to. So it didn't make sense to keep a child back for that. But the bigger issue was if we kept failing, 70% of our children, then we were forced, overcrowded classrooms were forced upon us. And keeping the children back did not see remediation happening. So keeping them back served nobody any purpose. In fact, what it did was overcrowded the system. So while I have not used the terminology or the phraseology of no child left behind, I do believe we should not be keeping children back unless it is for math and English. And I think if it's to keep them back to do some remediation, then we could solve that issue by doing the remediation in the following grade. That's always been a little bit of a weakness in the system, a lot of weakness, where I find classroom teachers are not assessing where a child is. They're just teaching the entire class as though everybody got it in second form when they get into third form. What I'd like to see more of is when everybody gets into third form, there's a diagnostic done and each child is treated as an individual. Where if these 5 are excellent at where and are at grade level where they should be, then we teach them, but that we don't leave the 20 who are behind, and that we make sure we devise ways in bringing them along so that everybody graduates. Right now, our matriculation rate, when I was Minister of Education in 2013, well, 2011, but we actually checked it in about 2012, 2013, the pass rates for rate for mathematics, well, the percentage pass rate, and by that I mean CXC counts grade 1, 2, or 3 as a pass, was 28%. And then by the time I left, it was 46 or 47%, because we had specific interventions going. We want to change that now. So we're still at about 48, 38, 39, depending on the year. So about 70% of our children, 60% of our children every year fail to pass mathematics. And that's because, in my view, what happens is we pass the problem on from class to class rather than um, monitoring happening to ensure that if this child didn't understand this concept, that we go it over until they understand it, and before we move on to another one. So the country has been doing better in overall. We're getting better results. We're getting a higher matriculation rate. We're getting a higher pass rate. But for me, I wouldn't feel like we've won until every last child is passing, every last child is matriculating. Matriculation for us means at least 5 subjects with inclusive of math and English. And until I could get that into the 100%, I wouldn't feel like we can stop.
Dr. Tara? Dr.
Tara,
Ganga, do you have a question?
well, I'll preface with the comment, and then I'll ask the question. Um,
And
the I'm glad that we have our minister here because she can help us understand the general characteristics of the system. So overall, the old ways is to have an educational pipeline. You put the students through and then you apply pressure and they come out at the other end. I think we may have to look again at our model, our educational model, because it has to serve many needs. And we need to take a factory educational factory manager's approach to the whole system and decentralize it in that manner so that they could be each unit could be autonomous and they could be evaluated. The old ways of evaluation was first you teach to the test, or you use model answers, and then you have your pass rates and so forth. I don't think that will carry us very far in this new era that we're looking ahead at. So we may have to
Well,
have.
we're looking at, you might be interested to hear that we're looking at curriculum reform in the primary and secondary, where we're trying to make sure we produce critical thinkers, people, children who could see a problem and find a solution without that solution necessarily having been taught to them. I think that's the new world that we have to build out. Um, it's new. So we just finished piloting. We're trying to introduce it into the system. And it has to do with more on hands learning, more using whatever resources we have around us. And that would be different for every region, every community to deliver the teaching and learning. So it's to have a more practical approach to um, the curriculum as opposed to just teaching to the test. The natural end to that would be that we don't have any single exams like the common entrance, or the that you have more continuous assessment type of exams, or like what CXC is doing in the OECS countries. The continuous assessment of projects, the project type assessments that allow for a child to do it until they get it right. Some children might write an essay immediately and get it right, and some may need to go back and work on it. Some may need peer help to do it. And so that's a whole new system we have to build out. We've started by engaging in curriculum reform that sees a more practical approach to learning. But as you can imagine, with every other, as is the case with every other education system, we're talking with large numbers of people. And wherever you have people, you'll have all kinds of reactions to change. And one of the most popular reactions to change is resistance. So it's something we really have to build out.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm glad to
can
hear
I
about.
ask you,
Just one last thing. I'm glad to hear about the
go ahead.
critical thinking and problem solving, and the tendency, or the looking ahead to have more open systems and continual evaluation. That that would be complementary with the new AI technology, where students can use it to develop the answer and then evaluate the answers, as opposed to finding a correct answer. They can develop alternative answers, and then they themselves can evaluate and test the answers with a view to either having new knowledge or new ideas that they themselves add to their own educational development. So I think that's a step in the right direction, and it will be complementary with the AI technology.
Yeah, we're currently looking at some partnerships with Coursera and how they could train large numbers for us. And one of the things we are looking at is exposing all of our trainee teachers at the Cyril Potter College of Education, Guyana's sole teacher training college, to AI and technology infused education. So that's a whole course we're building out through Coursera.
What in regards to skills training and development through your TVET program? I know that quite a lot of people have been trained, but you're planning to expand that program?
Yeah, when you were here, you would have known about GTI. You remember that? TI and Wilford Avenue.
Right, right.
And a lot of people went through there and lots of
Mhm.
lives were changed. And then we expanded to Essequibo, the ETI, Essequibo Technical Institute, Linden Technical Institute, New Amsterdam Technical Institute. And then in the Jagdeo era, that was expanded to Lenora. We had a Lenora Technical Institute and Maikoni Technical Institute. And right now, it should have been handed over by the 31st of October. I think there's some delays with tools and equipment, not necessarily the buildings. We have an expansion of 5 more TVET centers. There's going to be one in Mabaruma in Region 1, one in Region 9 at St. Ignatius, one at Fellowship in Region 3, one at Bartica in Region 7, one at Hope Town in Region 5, and one at Bedford in Region 4. So that's 6 new centers. We just opened with Ken Subraj. I don't know if you know that name from New York. The Ken
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Subraj.
Yeah. I know him well.
Oh,
Mhm.
a lovely family. They were just here to partner with us to open the Ken Subraj Technical Center, which is a massive 3-story state of the art type building, where technical education will be done. It's actually built in the TI compound, GTI in Wolford Avenue. So technical education is getting a lot of attention because we believe that skill is wealth. We believe that the country is in a place where the thrust is going to see a need for a large number of skilled persons where we both need them to develop, but they also can earn a sound and solid living on utilizing the skills that they earn and gain at these facilities. So big emphasis on technical vocational education.
So right now you have you said five PVET
Six
centers
six new ones
and
that are shortly you're going to see
six.
us cutting the
And how
ribbons
much you
for them.
plan to add? You
Right
have
now, I think those 6 would be relatively. There's also at Port Morant a skill training center that's being built out, a hospitality and tourism institute that's being done by the Ministry of Tourism, but it's all in the TVET type area where people are being trained to cater to different economies that are emerging in Guyana or that are not emerging. Some might have emerged already, but that are expanding rapidly in the country.
in terms of your ability to have some freedom to decide on curriculum.
Hmm.
Won't you be constrained to NGSA and CSEC administration because there's a Caribbean type of exam? So any changes you make in those two areas have to get their approval. Am I
Not
right
really.
there,
Guyana
or
has maintained for its primary exit, we're independent. We CXC sets the exam for us and controls it and manages it and marks it and does the system for us. But we have not yet signed on to the CPEA, which is the CXC version of the primary exit. Um, the OECS countries have. Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica have maintained our independent way of assessing and uh,
Mhm.
determining placement and entrance to secondary schools. But the CXE does control the CSEC, that's the high school exit. And so, like, that one will have to see uh, agreement at the level of CXE, the Caribbean Examinations Council, which is the regional examining body that deals with secondary exit exams. But the primary exit is still
what
ours.
about
But you're right, we can do things
what
by
about
ourselves. Hmm?
what about Cape?
CAPE
Cape
is also
CAPE.
CXE. It's run by CXE. And Guyana has signed on to CAPE, so we're actually doing CAPE, not O levels anymore. There is one school here, a private school that is doing O and A levels. That's School of Nations, but the public schools are doing CAPE, which is the Caribbean proficiency exams at the sixth form level. It replaces what you know as A levels.
Mm. Okay.
Advanced proficiency.
Something I was wondering. In your curriculum, I know you put a lot of emphasis on skill development, it's critical thinking, etc. But I'm looking at the human aspect of it. Do you plan to? I don't know if you have this, but I've been speaking to a lot of people, and they feel there is need for you to introduce some item or lesson on health education in schools
Mm.
because the health situation is not that good. Diabetes, hypertension, cancer is now raising its heads, mental illness.
Mhm.
Years ago, when I was going to, we had a class called hygiene. We had to do that and write an exam on it, which is a kind of a crude, but I think that health education is so vital because you can have all the education if you don't have health is a waste of time.
So we have something called health and family life education now. It's in the social studies curriculum. It's taught all the way from nursery into grade 9, which is third
It,
form.
it's a subject. It's a subject already.
It's integrated. So it's, yes, health and family life education, where we deal with some of those health issues. The chronic illnesses and so would get dealt with more in depth in the biology and chemistry and NT science classes. But the HFLE classes would teach on some of those issues you're raising. I'm not sure that we didn't have illnesses when you were growing up. It might be more we weren't able to diagnose. So people died and you didn't know why they died. Now we kind of know why we're dying, but we also know that the stats show that the chronic illnesses, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart failure, or heart disease, um, are, and of course the cancers, as you said, we're catching up with the rest of the world kind of rapidly.
All right. Back, Professor Narayan, back to you. We have a few more minutes. Are you there?
He's not there, Dr. Tara.
Yes,
You
I'm here,
continue.
but I keep getting cut off. I don't.
Okay, you're there. We can hear you. Go ahead. Ask your last question. Now
Yeah,
hearing.
I had more than one question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead with your
But
two
one of the
questions.
comments one of the comments I want to make is that I'm glad that the minister is focusing on student centered, whereby each the focus is on the individual student. So I'm glad to hear that. I've written an extensive article which was published in Guyana not so long ago, and one of the questions is the quality of STEM education within do you have after you train these students to ensure that they're employable employment. Did you hear me, Doc? Doc, did you hear me? You didn't?
You're breaking up
I
really
can hear
bad.
you.
You
I
can hear
can
me?
hear you, but
I
not
was saying
regularly.
that I was glad. Oh, I don't know why I get cutting off. I was saying that I was glad that the minister is focusing on student-centered education, and I'm glad to see that in the elementary,
Yeah.
in uplift.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I've written an extensive article on reforming the education system in Ghana a couple of months ago. And one of the questions I raised is the quality of STEM education and
Quality of
what
STEM.
we
Hmm.
what employment opportunities are there, so that people who are qualified in those areas do not look external rather
Okay.
than staying at home.
Okay.
So most of our high
You heard
schools,
that? You heard that, Minister?
yes, I think I got a gist of what he's
He's
asking
saying,
about the quality, the availability and quality of
go
STEM
ahead.
education. So STEM would be all that we just spoke about: the sciences and the TVETs, engineering, mathematics, and so um, exactly what we need in this new oil economy, where we are trying very hard to prepare our people, to our children and who will become young people and adults and then have their own families, to take up jobs here and not have to import labor and skills and learning to be able to do those jobs. And so most of our high schools are doing sciences. Um, we have some problems with facilities like labs and electricity in some places, literally. But we're trying very hard, and that's part of the reform in the primary school. Try very hard to introduce the sciences to create an interest from a really early level, more experiments, more practical introductions to these subjects of study, so that when children come to high school, they're able to better use it. You may know that we just had a few extensions of schools, and the purpose of those was to put a concentration of more students who are able to do the sciences into some of those schools. It was very thought out. The schools that we're currently building. So we're currently building a secondary school at the Northwest in Region 1, that's Mabaruma, at Hosororo in Region 1, Queban in Region 1. In Georgetown, we're going to open the Yarrow Cabra Secondary School in a couple of weeks on the highway. The highway is the Susdike Highway. We're building a school right now at Karasabay in Region 9, that's Central, Rupanuni. We're building right now in Georgetown, St. Mary's, St. George's, Christchurch, North Rhineveld. We've just expanded East Rumveld and St. Winifred's, and all of these schools have accompanying lab space, equipment, materials for science subjects. And so that's really important to us, that we don't just put down a school and say, here's a school, but that we have exposure to subjects that would make the people of those attending those schools competitive in this country and able to contribute sensibly to Guyana, but also to their own lives and the improvement of their own villages by their earnings when they start working. So what is the quality right now? I think if we're to, when you ask me about quality, it would have to be comparatively speaking to the Caribbean. We're doing best. We've copped the best science, best TVET, the best overall most outstanding student for a number of consecutive years in the Caribbean, outside of just doing well. So comparatively speaking, I think we're doing a little bit better than our Caribbean counterparts, but we're not where Finland is or Switzerland is, and those are the countries that we're aiming to take our education level to, where it's optimal.
All right, Dr. Ganga, your last question.
Yeah, I have an overall comment, not so much of a question, and that is when we're
Okay,
considering
go ahead.
practical and technical education, we must avoid this cultural bias and caution ourselves, because sometimes they think that theory is not required when you're doing practical things. So we tend to say, oh, I'm a practical guy, I don't need theory. Theory is essential to understand how things work. If you take the human body, for example, there's a lot of theory underlying how that system works. So we should not neglect theory, and we should inculcate the need for theory. That would inform us how the mileage of our educational tire wear, how much we get out of our education. And you extend that with understanding different theories and theoretical discoveries, and in that way you can use existing knowledge or add new knowledge to your understandings and make
Mhm,
new discoveries.
mhm.
All right. Thank you, sir. Um, Professor Narayan, in terms of technical training, the Board of Industrial Training, 75 to 80% of those people trained have gained employment. So the rate is fairly pretty good. Um,
Yeah, that's
now,
good.
the Board of Industrial
The
Training, which comes under the Ministry of Labor,
yeah,
Hmm.
Now, my final,
They do some very good work
my
there. They
final,
actually go into communities and meet the needs of individual communities. So in Georgetown, you might
yeah,
want to do masonry. But if you're going
mm,
to deep upper Mazaruni, you want to do heavy duty machinery, driving and
mm,
repairing, not masonry, because they don't have need for masons there in the same quantity that they do here.
no.
And so I find
All
that the
right,
BIT, which is run by
there.
Minister Hamilton, um, does very well in meeting the needs of the particular communities, certifying people and making them employable almost immediately, which is a little bit different from how we do it. We're
Yeah.
a little bit more intense, long term, certified, certifiable. Our programs make you Caribbean ready, but his programs give people that immediate boost that they need, um, by getting them trained and qualified, certified, and then into jobs.
Okay, my final question. What's the ratio of teacher to pupil?
So
You have
right
a rough
now, it's
idea?
funny that you asked me that. We're currently calculating that now because right now, so it's at nursery. I'll give you the ideal, and then I'll come back to where I was going. At
Mm,
nursery, it's 15 to 1. Primary, it's 25 to 1, and secondary, it's 35 to 1. That's the ideal, and about 80% of our schools are in an ideal place, but we do have some overcrowding. What we will have in uh, November 29th is the graduation of 2,300 teachers, a little bit more. And that is 2,300 teachers. We've only ever been able to graduate per year at its highest 535 teachers. So this injection of trained teachers into the system is going to see our largest concentration of trained teachers yet. It's going to see, so that's towards quality that are actually going to be trained, but quantitatively, you're actually going to see more teachers in the system than you have ever seen before. And so I hope that our placement allows us to bring down the class sizes where they're heavy. We do have a problem with that, and the problem with that is take Region 10. In Linden, it's 110% trained teachers. That's what we have. We have excess teachers there, but not 10 miles out of Linden in the riverine areas. Nobody wants to go. So you have 110% in Linden. That's the center of Region 10. And then as you go into the riverine communities, your trained teachers start looking like 20%. Sometimes 0% trained teachers. You just have acting teachers teaching. So we hope to see, I know we'll see a larger percentage of trained teachers. I hope that translates into smaller classrooms because people take up the challenge. We're looking at how we could incentivize the exploring nature of our people, and ask teachers when they're young to go into the regions, see how those communities live, teach their benefit from it, not just emotionally and health wise because it's such fresh air and so on, but also benefit from it financially. So that's one of the things under consideration. How do we incentivize teachers who choose to go into the hinterland? We're on a massive build out program right now where we want to um, take all our look at where we have schools all over the hinterland, make sure we have teacher housing for them. I think in Region 9, we're very close to having 100% of the schools with adequate teacher housing where it's needed, so that if anybody goes in from the coast or goes from another village, that they're comfortably accommodated. Um, and that's in Region 9. We'll still have serious vacancies in Region 8, in the upper Mazaruni area in Region 7, and in the remote areas of Region 1.
Thank you very much. I know we have so many questions to ask, but the time has run out. We probably got to get you again. I pass you over now to Shamiza, our host.
Hmm.
Thank, thank you, Dr.
Shamiza?
Tara. Uh,
Hmm.
Minister, thank you so much for being here this evening. First of all, we have, I think it's more of a concern. And this viewer is saying teachers in St. Ignatius not teaching or helping the children to build their foundation. They're just coming in classrooms, giving homework or assignment, and tell them to go research. This is something
Well,
that one of the viewers are concerned about.
I'm glad you raised it. I'm pretty sure we have professionals watching this show right now, and
Right.
they just heard you. So I expect by tomorrow midday, we're going to get some kind of report on that.
Perfect. Thank you. And this other comment is actually, this is a question, and it is from Mahendra. He is asking, how is the government working to enhance vocational education opportunities in remote or underprivileged areas, ensuring that students have access to relevant skills training that can empower them economically and contribute to local development?
Yeah, and I was saying earlier, so maybe
Right.
Mahendra wasn't
Yeah, I
in the
heard.
program. Remember, I said earlier that when not so long ago, Guyana knew one single vocational training
Mhm.
center, technical vocational training center that was in the center of Georgetown. In the next couple of weeks, you're going to see me opening TVET centers in Region 1. That's very remote in Mabaruma, in Region 9 in Lethem, at Hopetown in Region 5, at Bedford-Wacting in the East Coast, at Fellowship in Region 3,
Mhm.
Bartica in Region 7. So just trying to make sure the service is accessible all around. You're not going to be able to put a TVET training center in every village, but we're trying to make sure that there are opportunities available for those who would avail themselves of them. Um, and that the best way to do that is to make sure there are established buildings and facilities in place in the areas where none had existed before.
Perfect. And then this one is asking, I would like to know if the BITS certificate could give persons an opportunity to attend the teachers training college.
I don't think
BITS certificate.
BIT certificate is an allows one to be eligible in and of itself.
Okay.
Um, there are different ways people can get into the BIT program. So if you had five CXE subjects with math and English and you got in on that, then you would be eligible on your five subjects. But a BIT certificate in and of itself, depending on which one it is not necessarily going to allow for eligibility into the teachers training college.
Thank you.
It
And
would
then
allow
this
you
one,
to work at a teachers training college. It would allow you to help us tile the floors and fix the walls if we have to. But to get into the college, it might not.
okay. This one, this is more of a concern. Uh, this viewer said, I would like to see a drastic measure being placed on truancy, and parents must be held accountable for delinquency.
Mhm.
And we also have another one that says, please find out why sweeper cleaners get pay. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I do want to ask a question, and this one is coming directly from me. So, congratulations on the recent Common Entrance and CXC exams. I know Guyana have placed really well, so congratulations. Um, so, with Guyana having the rapid growth that it's having right now, right? Are we adjusting the education system to reflect those changes? And is the curriculum changing based on Guyana's progress and, in terms of technology and so many other fields? Is it changing? Are you guys considering that in your curriculum for education in Guyana?
Yeah. Yes. And, it's easy to say that, but I'll give you some practical examples, which I hope will make you a little bit more comfortable. The expansion of our TVET centers to everywhere else is our embracing the fact that we are changing out economically. And so the needs of the country are changing. And it really evidences our desire and intention that people all over benefit in this thriving New Guyana. So that's the first thing. The fact that we're looking at curriculum reform to make sure we're more practical, we're more able to problem solve, critically think through issues rather than just get cram it for a test so that when you come out into the real world you can function, might indicate forcefully that we're trying very hard to be competitive in the world. So it's not just us saying yes, we'd like to change, and we know we need to. It's us actually doing things to show that we're trying to prepare our young people for life in Guyana, but life as a world citizen. um, the sweeper cleaners. So I want to address that because you asked about it. So prior to September last year, sweeper cleaners all across the country were on a month-to-month contract. What that means is that they would get paid every month, but they were not entitled to any benefit, no leave allowance, no gratuity, none of those benefits that they would get. As of September last year, after heavy advocacy and years of talking about it a little bit, we put the sweeper cleaners on contract. They have 1 year contracts with the government of Guyana, which allows them to enjoy a leave passage, which allows them to enjoy leave, which allows them to enjoy gratuity. Every 6 months, they would get 22.5% of whatever their salary is. So that's what we did. Now, who pays the sweeper cleaners? And so that's a very good question you asked. Again, by law, not because we feel like, by law, the country is decentralized. The governance of the country is decentralized. That is why you have local government elections, you have regional democratic elections, when you have national elections. So you have central government running the governance of the country as a whole, but in every region you have a regional government. By law, the region employs its regional education officer, its health officer, its agricultural extension officer, its accountants, its teachers, so they're all employed there. Regions are the people who pay sweeper cleaners. Georgetown pays for the Georgetown schools. The Central Ministry pays for the Georgetown schools. But in Region 4, it would be the Regional Democratic Council of Region 4. In Regional Democratic Authority. In Region 10, it would be the RDC of Region 10. So I think what happened is the contract was up this September. I've heard about it. The contract was up this September. Some regions slowly didn't bother to renew in the same speed that other regions did. And so in some regions, Region 4 in particular, there are about 100 or so sweeper cleaners who wouldn't get their salary this month. They'll have to wait till next month. And I'm really, really heartbroken about that because I know people depend on that monthly salary. But it's a regional problem. It's something I hope they don't repeat next year. And even as I say, one region couldn't pay their people, I can tell you 8 other regions did. So again, it's just how people manage their areas.
Thank you very much. And I was going to close off, but I see this one comment here, and I do want to address it. It's from Tessa D. Johnson. She says, "Good night, Priya. I was trained teacher for 30 years. I would like to assist me with my teacher's pension." And she placed her phone number, which I can send to you through Messenger. But 30 years, thank you so much, Tessa, for everything that you've done for our children. And I will definitely forward your message to the minister so she can forward it to the correct
Yeah,
department.
so Tessa, I'd love to see your message, and I want to echo Shamiza's thanks. I mean, you would have changed a lot of lives and lives that those people would have come into contact with. I can't think of a more honorable calling than teaching. My mother and her entire family were all teachers, and I saw how much influence and change that could bring about. Teachers generally would get a pension at 33 and 1/3 years or at retirement. So I'm not sure if she's eligible, but I'd be happy to look at it.
Thank you very much. And Minister, your closing remarks.
We're focused on access, improving access to secondary and nursery education, particularly. We're focused on improving the quality of education that we deliver. That includes giving trained teachers, giving resource materials like textbooks and classrooms, infusing technology into the teaching learning process, assisting parents and supporting families through grants and food and other means. And so our aim is to produce a rounded student who exits high school that is able to cope in the Guyana that is going to be here shortly upon us, the Guyana that's already being built out, and able to cope in the world generally. We feel like we're on the right path. I mean, every day you could spend a large amount of the day firefighting on some of the issues that arise every day. It's a large sector. So, with 200,000 children and 12,000 teachers and 1,000 schools, you can end up every day dealing with some minutiae that's minute, but that's important to people. Flooding and toilets that don't work and teachers that don't teach and so on. But in all of that, we're trying very hard to build out an accountable system, a system that graduates children who are thinkers and also able to access tertiary education. So both academically strong, but also persons who can reason and think through problems that our country might be faced with. In all of that, we are you've seen me. You've dealt with me a couple of times on this program. Try to remain very, very grounded, very in touch with people. The best feedback I get is usually from the ground and not from sitting in the office. So I try very hard to balance that, being at work at my desk to make sure we can push off some things, but also being with people and making sure we learn what some of the reality is on the ground, because sometimes the reports that you receive sanitize some of the hardships people are facing. So my favorite time is usually in the public meetings and then responding to the issues that come out of those. We have just under 3 years. We've done most of the things we promised to do, not only in education, but across the various sectors. You've seen President Ali, you've seen the way he works, you've seen his ethics, you've seen the vice president, and particularly our general secretary, who told us before he came into government that his interest would be to make sure that we delivered on the things he promised. And he led us to promise when he was general secretary only of the opposition party. So we're focused, very, very focused, even as we have the new things coming along to that could appear bright and shiny and distracting. We are heading towards fulfilling those manifesto promises, which we believe will change lives, as well as staying grounded with people.
Thank you
In the
very much.
we work to earn our votes. We work to win hearts and souls. We're never going to rig an election. So we have to work hard if we want to be able to continue to serve.
Perfectly said. Thank you
Thank,
very much. Thank you to
thank
our
you,
entire
Minister.
panel. And Dr. Tara, thank you for being
Thank,
here this evening. And to all of our viewers, we
yes,
appreciate you being here this evening. Until next time, this is the Guyana Dialogue, and I'm your hostess, Shamiza Ali. Good evening.
thank,
Good
thank you,
evening.
Minister. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Shamiza.
Thank you.